Alright, I'm finally here. Okay, so we're all starting off from the last session we had last night. Starting off on the coloring of Pegasus. Going into the first lesson. Add some space right here. So mind you, I haven't done any of these, so we'll both be learning at the exact same time. As you know, I probably know at least some of what it's describing, but probably not all of the syntax. So, we'll learn this together. Okay, I hope the volume isn't too loud. Mm. Yeah, do a little test to make sure. Doing some testing right now to make sure. Mm. Well, I'll make sure everything's good. Isn't everything isn't too loud. All right, cool. All right, so that started. I think we're good to go. All right. So where we're picking off is we're going to the coloring portion of this. Alright, so let's start. We've been given the basic layout of our game. It's up to us, the game developer, to provide the part of our game that makes it playable. We need to create the mechanics of the game, the part that makes it more than a picture of a Pegasus. Okay, so the first part is find the create function. Okay, so right here, and then near line 10, so here's line 10, there's a for loop that we iterate over each shape in Pegasus. Okay. So, as you know, in the last lesson, we went over variables, we went over game objects, like the game state. Um, we went over if and else statements. Um, we went over the basic um, components of each of the game pieces here. And mind you, like I said, you don't need to. I know this might be all intimidating, but we're not going over all this stuff. We're just going where all the comments are laying out. So we're going step by step. So as you can see, a new concept now introduced is the for loop, and this is what is known as a for each loop. So what it's doing is basically this variable right here, that's created, the new variable is going inside of is getting each and every item inside Pegasus shapes. So if you want, we can go and we can try to look for Pegasus shapes. This is get Pegasus shapes. We can keep going, keep looking, and it's all in here. Anyway, so pretty much it's just going through this whole array of body parts and pieces, and it's just getting every single piece in here, and each and individual piece is stored in this variable shape. So each shape is going to have a smoothness of 25. The stroke color is going to have, I believe this is black. Um, the stroke's true, set origin's true, line width. So now it wants to make sure every shape is interactable. So as we know that we can set um, each element or each object as interactive, as we know um, from the last lesson. So let's go ahead and take the shape as we have up here, and then dot um, set interactive, right? So now each shape that is within this loop, or that this is getting, is now interactable. And add a pointer up handler here. So every time we click on it, we're going to make it do a function. So I believe that's what we're going. When one of the shapes is clicked on, we should update its fill color to be the active color that we keep track of in our game state. We'll work on updating that active color later, but for now we start with the default game state selected color. So start by creating a handler for each shape on pointer up. So, okay, so shape dot, I don't believe that's input. I'm trying to remember what that was yesterday. So, the shape we're taking, making sure each one of them has an input. Was it input dot on, or was it trying to remember what that was. We'll start with the default. See if I can find in a event handler, because I can't think of what that was. So it was shape dot. Give me a second. Now I need to figure out. So for the Phaser 3 documentation, we're probably going to see. This is a perfect example of when you're going to forget a lot of stuff, even though you've been doing a lot of it, even the basics. So it's good to take notes. So here we go. Here. Yep, so I was right. So the input. Alright, so go with your first guess. So on, input dot on, and then remember the pointer up. And then I'm going to do a function, empty function, and there you go. So whenever we do a pointer up, it's saying it wants to do the game state dot select a color. So here's the selected color for now right here. So that's good. So we'll just go ahead and we'll call the game state dot selected color. Okay. So we'll do that. Alright, let's try to run this, see if it goes through. So that one's done. This worked, but this one updates fill color. So the game state dot, oh no, it should be not the game state. It should be not, and this should, okay, so hold on. Here we go. So it should be the shape, because it's each one of them, and then we choose the fill color of each one of them and set it to the game state dot selected color. That's what it was wanting to do, which is up here. Alright, so let's see if that changes it. We did. So maybe we need to put in this for each one? No, we did. Well, certainly made each one of those shapes. So, no. We should update its fill color to be the act. So we set the interactive. Now, update its fill color to be the active color that we keep track of in our game state. Active color layer, but for now, default. Creating a handler for each shape on pointer up. So, on pointer up, there's a function. Fill color. And we're setting it equal to the game state selected color. So it's saying that this, but it shouldn't be each one of them. So in the create, it wants yeah, it should. So it's setting all of them to this color. But for now, we start with the default for each shape. Okay. So for each shape, input on pointer up function, changing the shape dot fill color, and make it equal to the game state dot selected color, which is right. So where is the disconnect? And if you do shape, and it wouldn't be game state dot update this dot. So would that be this dot fill color then? Update this dot fill color. That doesn't seem right. So yeah, no, it doesn't do anything. Right. Because this needs to declare what we're doing. So it's the shape, right? So we're back to here. It's fill color. So it should be each color. So So I'm trying to figure out where the disconnect would be. Dot. I don't think that would work. No. See, now I've run into a roadblock. Shape inside the for loop commands have written to describe the presentation. Set the stroke color line with okay. Among other things, we will follow this up by defining the shape's interactability. Did that. So we did that. Every shape now has the set interactive. We want the shape. Right. Dot input on. Pointer up. Right. So the code would be the active color that we keep track of in our game state. Okay. Start by creating a pointer for each shape on pointer up. So we did. Shape input on pointer up. Run that. It turns black. So So this FL color, which will be the shape that's clicked, to be set to the game state dot selected color. So this is right. So why? Alright, so instead of just looking at the solution, let's try to fill this out ourselves by, so let's try, we can do this, creating an event handler with mouse input. Okay, and phaser 3. So try this and input manager. So start listeners on mouse down, on window, on mouse move. Let's look at pointer up. Pointer up with the mouse input phaser 3. So touch events. Alright. The pointer is down. So the scene, the on, we have our pointer up, the function, and you have your pointer. So we have that right. So we have the shape dot input dot on with the pointer up, and then you have a function with this dot fill color because game state and selected color. That is weird why that wouldn't, because it seems like what we're doing should be doing what it's supposed to. So touch. So it's interactive. So we have the game option, game object, which we have as the shape, and then we have input on pointer up, we have the function. So for experimentation, nope, because I thought that would be the shape, but it doesn't. Well, that would be then we would have to put the shape dot select as. Well, if we do shape, and then we have the shape of the fill color. Nope. Not gonna lie, I'm a little stumped on this one. So let's see what this actually gives us. So this is where it is giving us a problem. It should not. So it's just a shape dot on pointer up. So we didn't have to put a semicolon. But on here we put the input. But you can just put instead of putting input, you can just do an on. Huh. Alright, I'm going to keep the code. I will keep this to see if it still goes on, if it still produces the result. Because it shouldn't matter with this right here. But we'll just have to see. See? So you can put the semicolon, you don't have to. But it's best practice to put the semicolon in there. Okay. So it's basically taking the shape right here, each shape of Pegasus, and each one you're taking that shape and you're giving it an on pointer of pointer up, and whenever you click it, it takes each individual piece. Okay. So, and each one you selected, it's getting the selected color right here. It's not actually getting any of the palette. And that'll be for later. But yeah, so that's interesting. So now, because usually whenever we did this, we would do an input. Then using a straight event handler that goes straight to on. So I guess in here we can just go, when it comes to these, like in a for loop, you can just bypass the input and just use an on, I presume. So I gotta remember that for the book. Let's put it here. Okay. Alright, well, I know we did this dot fill color, so it's basically saying each one of these will take this, which is the shape, its fill color property, and then change it to the game state selected color. Okay. Yeah, I was a little stumped, a little tricky, but we'll definitely have to remember that. So let's go to the next one. So now we're going to update the color. So now there's the palette, select the color. So basically we'd be changing this selected color, I guess, I presume, to the palette. So setting up the palette circles, adding the rectangle. So this is the palette box. Oh, here. Set origin 0, 0. Okay. Palette circles. Right here. Spacing. So now we have a regular for loop. So you have your declared variable, which is I, which starts at 0, and then it says, okay, I, which is 0, if it's less than the game state dot palette dot length, so the length of this palette, it's going to keep iterating over. So it's going to go through each one of these in the palette. So create each of the palette circles with one of the colors from the palette. So it gets the color, sets the color equal to the game state dot palette, and it uses the I. So from here, this is what's going through each one of those colors in the palette. And then it creates this palette circle here. So the transition, the spacing, translation plus spacing times I. So what number it's on. So if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, up into the length, so it's timesing by that, 5, 115. So this is where it's going to be located, and then it's setting it to the color. So it's going through the game state palette, so each one of these right here, and storing in the variable color, and then it's creating the palette circles by adding the circle, and basically it's, you know, spacing it evenly by the number of palette, or the number of palettes we have, and then we are choosing the location of where it's going to start, and then the color. It's okay. So work on making that palette selector functional. When we click on the color, we want to become the selected color, right? Need to use a third argument to our event handler method, .on, where we give extra context to be used within our event handler. We want each color in a color palette, which is palette circle right here, to be aware of the color that it indicates, so that it can update the game state selected color. So whichever one is selected on here, it's going to update the selected color to that color of the palette. Okay. So as you can see, it's getting a bit harder, but you know, this is why we learn. And you know, sometimes, you know, you just need to look at the solution and figure it out, and then you use it for next time. And that's perfectly okay. But your first thing you want to do is make sure you try your hardest to try and figure it out yourself before going that route. So, okay. Important number to be an important piece of data that we want to use inside our event handler. Okay. Alright. The syntax for our event context is this. So, okay. So the number we want to use, point event handler, we want to use our important numbers. So GameObject.on, the pointer up, function, this dot GameObject. So it's getting the X of this, and this dot important number. So it's getting this from this. So it's setting this object to this, to 10. So it's getting the X and setting it to 10. Okay. So it's taking 3 arguments. So you have function, or your the event it's calling, the function for the second one, and then this right here, it seems the variables of what it is using. Piece of data that we want to use inside our event handler, we call the pointer up to create an event handler for the game object clicked event. Inside the event handler, this refers to our game object. Okay, so this. Unless the third argument is present. refers to our game object unless the third argument is present, which is the context. Since we provide a third argument, this now has the properties .important number and .game object were accessed through this .important number and this .game object. So now that we have context for this, we're now giving properties to the game object through here. Okay. This game object. In the code above, we made the x value of game object to be whatever values inside of important number, right? But since this doesn't refer to the game object anymore, we need to pass that onto the context given by the third argument as well. Okay. To create games of great complexity, knowing the value of this makes our game development easier. In this case, by explicitly providing a third argument in our event handle, we know exactly what this is. Therefore, we've also improved the readability of our code because other developers would also know what this is within our handler. When we and other developers on our team understand our code, it makes the debugging or adding new features quicker and smoother. Correct. And that's a big important lesson, is why we make comments. So if, we need to figure out, okay, what is doing what, well, I can look at this comment and I can figure out, okay, so this is what it's doing right here. So you're changing essentially the game object. So this would originally be this, but would be the game object. However, since we add this third argument, this is explicitly what we are giving the properties to. So this .game you're giving it its own set of properties. So this .game object .x will equal this .important number. So it's getting the game object of x. Okay. And you're explicitly telling it what is the value of this. Okay, so we want to use our palette circles at the bottom to create the color when we click on them. Find the part of our create function, okay, that we iterate over each of the palette circles. You see a comment or near 38. Yep, that's where we're at, going over each of the palette circles. Okay. And this is the for loop, like we said, of going over each one. And iterate over each of the palette circles. You see a comment on your 38. Yep. The first thing we should do is set each palette circle as interactive. Okay. So we want to make sure that each palette circle here is interactive. So palette circle is .set interactive. Okay. Simple enough. Okay, so we did that. Now let's add the actual click handler. Alright. So now we add a click handler event. So for each one, for each palette circle event, handler for the pointer up event. So let's go palette circle dot on, and then we do a pointer on up event. Alright, so we do that, and then we create a function. Okay. And I'm going to add this for here, just for my own sake. Alright, this is empty. So we're wanting to take each one of these. It's okay. Alright, so let's see if this runs. We created the basic one. Okay. And the reason why we don't have to use the I value here is because it's already stored in color. As you can see here, the palette circle, this goes through each one and creates the circle, and the eye is used right here for each one of these, and then your color that storms the palette color in here. So it basically indirectly is telling each one of them, hey, we're doing each one of these, we're setting interactive on each one of these circles, and we are setting the pointer up event on each circle as well. So, all right. Okay. For each palette circle here. Yep. So now we want to provide the color we define inside the loop. Okay, so right here. Yep. To the handler. Let's add that as a context by passing it in an object as a third argument to on. Okay, so pass color as a third argument. Okay, so this will now relate to the color, right? So whenever we put this dot, selected color is now setting it to the game state selected color when we do that, and set the palette color that's active to that one. We're now referring this color right here. We're giving this value a color. So pass color as the third argument to palette circle dot on, which is what we did, so that we can use it within the handler. Yep. Okay. So now that we have all the pieces, let's use the handler to update the selected color in our game state. So inside the body of our event handler, so right here. Okay. So the game state, now the selected color, so the game state selected color is now going to be equal to this dot color. And that should, I believe, work. Yep. Cool. Cool. So we're now changing this value, right, to whichever one we click on in here. And then that will change that value. So it's basically saying, okay, so each one of these that are going through the loop right here, it's going through each one of these of the length of the palette. And it's, iterating over by, the eye is iterating 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc. And so each one of those, it goes from the game state and it goes into the palette. So right here, so we do game state.palette, and it goes through each one of these right here. And that stores it within color. So now all the colors of the palettes are stored in this one variable. Now, to create the palette circles to hold all this, so we have this dot add dot circle, what we did in the last session that we did. We're now doing this transition or translation plus spacing. So this right here we haven't gone over anything, so don't feel bad not knowing this or confused because we haven't done this yet. But it is going the translation plus the spacing, and then timesing it by the number of each palette here, or each color. Yeah, each palette right here. And then the position, and then you have the color right here of this value. So it's passing it in here. So it's saying like, here's this circle, and here's the color of each one that's going into. Alright. So it'll go like, okay, here's the first one. Okay, that color is this one right here. It goes to the next one, it's this color right here, and this one, and this one, and this one. And then it gives, the width, the stroke color, like the black around is stroked. Yes, it is. It's true. And then the line width, etc. So we set it interactive. we set to make sure each palette is able to be clicked. The game state, select a color now is this dot color. So is the color that we selected. Alright, we'll go ahead and run this. Sure. So this will be our color. As you can see, now it goes through each one over here. And changes the color. So you can put that one. This will be our new selected one, as you can see. Okay. So there you are. So this is fully working. Saying interactive, going through each one of these. I know it's a big jump, but if you actually do like a JavaScript course, you can actually, learn more of the values of for loops and, variables and all these other things, different components. And you can actually learn that also on Codecademy as well. And you can also do LinkedIn Learning, or you can find courses on Udemy. There's plenty of vast learning outlets that you can go through to learn, programming. Especially, and even on your phone as well. There's many different apps that you can go through. But so I'm just kind of doing an overview of what each component and what each thing is doing, so that way you can kind of understand how each piece of this machine is going through, and hopefully you're understanding a little bit more. So, all right. So now we have this, and each component is interactable. All right. So let's go to the next one. Okay. So indicating the selections. So coloring the Pegasus is great. The playing aspect of a game is figured out, but we need to consider our presentation. If you want someone playing your game to know where to click and how to actually color in the Pegasus, we're going to need to work on the interface. And that is absolutely right. So you can select these right here, and you can tell, because I pressed them, and, I can guess, that it is now selected, but there's really no feedback showing that it's actually selected. So you'd have to know that when you hover over which one's kind of being selected, and when you go out of this palette, knowing that it's not there anymore. So we need to do that. So we're going to use screen blend mode to indicate which part of the Pegasus is going to be selected. Blend modes dictate how a filled-in shape interacts with the other shapes visible, somewhat like changing the opacity and color of the shape. The result will be that of our highlights section will turn semi-transparent and white with a color or a white outline. So when you hover over it, it'll be a little transparent. So inside our for loop, let's see where that's at. Okay, so we're in for each loop right here, which we're going to use the shape again to get each piece of the Pegasus. As you can see, here is our pointer up function that we created a little bit ago to get the selected color, the fill color, this fill color to the selected color. Alright, so create a point over event for each shape. Alright, so we're going to do a shape dot on. Now instead of doing the pointer up, it'd be over. So when it hovers over this, we're going to have a little feedback. So let's do a pointer over. Okay, so function. Okay, So we need a function over. Now, inside our new pointer over event, change the blend mode of our shape by calling the this dot set blend mode phaser dot blend modes dot screen. Okay, so that's done. So let's go ahead and run that. Alright, so where are we failing at here? So inside our for loop, iterates over our shapes, right? On create a pointer over event for each shape. So shape dot on pointer over. Okay. Is this because we put something in there too early? Yep, and that was the case. We went ahead a little bit. So now we can put in the this dot blend mode and phaser blend mode screen. So we can run that. Okay, so what is going on? So this dot set blend mode. Okay. Phaser. Ah, there we go. We didn't put the D, the blend modes. So let's try running that again. Okay, there we go. Alright. Got just a fly here that's buzzing around. It's getting colder outside, so they're all trying to duck in here. So, okay. Alright, perfect, but the parts of the Pegasus don't stop being white and spooky looking. Oh, okay. So, here we go. We want to know which one we're selecting. So, which, of course, we're getting the shape and on pointer over, so I should know that. It's not the palettes we're going over, it's the each shape here. Yep. And we're wanting to know which one we're going. So now we need to add a pointer out, so whenever you go out of it, it'll stop doing this this blend. So let's do another handler. That's a shape dot on, and instead of pointer over, we're going to do pointer out function. If I can type. Okay. Okay. So we'll do a this dot set blend mode. Alright, so now what is it wanting us to do? So we're setting the blend mode. Now we're setting it to phaser. Oh, phaser dot blend modes dot normal. Okay. Okay. So let's see what happens on this. Alright, so what is happening here? Shape the on, pointer out. You have the function. This dot set blend mode. Phaser dot blend modes dot normal. Need to add a pointer out event handler that sets the shape's blend mode back to normal if we stop running. First, create the pointer out event handler. Okay. So again. So where are we at? with this because it's still presenting us an error. On each one. Parts of the Pegasus don't stop being weighed. Spooky, we need to add in a pointer out of it handler that says shapes by mode normal if we stop hovering over it. So this is we did the pointer over, which was right here. So why? That was fine. Okay, so hmm. Pointer on. We have the pointer out function. So I don't know how why it would be. Okay, so there's one. But did that aha. So I didn't put a comma in there indicating the separation of the the arguments. Okay, so now, now we gotta this dot set blend mode. All right, so no, not this. Phaser dot modes dot blend modes dot normal. That's what we did. Okay. Okay, so that should be good. All right. All right. As you can see, when we hover over them, every individual piece, each shape, it sets the blend mode. If we hover over it, it sets it to screen. And then whenever we hover out, it returns it back to normal. And as you can see, some of these parts are not correct that they programmed in here, or they set up, but you get this. You still get the gist and the picture of it. All right. Sorry, guys. Really haven't ate too much, so that's why I'm eating a little bit. Alright, so that is done for this little section here. So we'll go on to the next module. So now that we have indicated the pointer for each of the horse pieces, or the Pegasus, sorry, we now have to do the same with the pallets. Now, we know that a pallet circle has been clicked before it becomes active, except for the default. So we only need to write a pointer out handler for our palette circles to highlight the ones that has been selected. Pointer out. Create a pointer out handler for each palette circle. Give it a context that lets it access not just palette circle but also the color. Okay. So we'll do the palette here and this one. So we'll do the palette circle dot on, and then we'll do the, it wants us to do a pointer out event. Function. Oh. Okay. Get that here. And then for us to be able to use the color variable, remember for this, right here, give it the context so it lets it access not just the palette circle but also color. So I'll go ahead and put another comma, add our third argument, and add the color in here so that way this variable can obtain it. Okay. Now we want our default color to be, for the event, to be setting the stroke color of the default black. Start off our event handler by setting the palette circle stroke color to black. Okay. So palette circle dot stroke color, and then we will okay, so x 0 1 2 3 4 5 6. Okay, so let's see where we're at right now. Got too ahead of ourselves. I bet that's what it was. Okay. Palette circle and pointer out. Okay. So power circle on that the pointer out. You have the function. And we did. We added the pointer out. And it is interactable. So we choose the one, and it's supposed to get rid of this color. But either way, we need to three color. So wait a minute. Oh, wait. It needs to access palette circle and color. That's why. To give it context. Okay. So it's taking one of them, each one of those. So the context is the palette circle and the color. That's right. Okay. So what we did was we want to set